guy was super creepy.
Amberseer Unsock is probably top 3 or 4 most difficult bosses in this phase, and this is because it has 3 unique phases that are very complicated and require raiders to do unique roles that often in other past versions of this kind of fight could at least be controlled to certain people. Now everyone has to learn it, and let's get into why. Phase 1 is from 100 to 70% life left on the boss himself, and he casts a number of abilities that we have to work around. The first of these abilities is called Amber Scalpel, and a random raider will be fixated by a beam from the boss. It'll follow you. You have to kite the beam away, and as far as possible, ideally. And wherever the tail of the beam hits, a spawn of a small living amber ad will appear. Now, once an individual living amber ad appears, it will then pick another raider or any raider randomly, and it will fixate on them. So each individual amber ad will have a perhaps different target. It will go to that player until it's killed, and so those players must kite those amber ads away from other amber ads. And this is because we want to kill these amber ads as a raid, but you cannot kill them near each other or else they'll heal the other ones near them when it dies. And when an amber dies, he leaves a pool, which is a resource used by construct players, which we'll get into at a later point. In addition, in Heroic only, any amber pool left on the ground will spawn a new living amber every 30 seconds. The final ability of the boss in Phase 1 is called Parasitic Growth, and it will debuff a random raider for 30 seconds, which does a ticking nature damage every 2 seconds. But importantly, for healers to know, is that you cannot heal this player. They just simply have to take the damage, because if you do heal the player, it will increase the damage done on that player for the next ticks. And so basically, it's a control mechanic that stops healers from instinctively healing people. This is the point where I'll introduce the construct mechanic, which is critical to the whole fight. Very similar to Professor Putricide, you may become a construct in this fight. You turn into a big amber dude, and you have a certain number of abilities. The first ability is called Consuming Amber, which absorbs a pool of amber, which is dropped by those living ambers, as we discussed earlier. By consuming a pool, you get plus 20 willpower, which is a degrading resource that your construct has. If you run out of willpower and you haven't escaped the construct, you die. However, consuming a pool will increase your character's life by 5%. And why this is important is because the only way you can escape your construct application is your construct must be damaged by other raiders to sub 20% life remaining. When that happens, you get a new ability which lets you escape. So if you are too low in willpower and will drain your willpower before you hit 20% or less, you have to consume a pool to get that resource back to live a little longer so that the raiders can kill you down to sub 20% life remaining, and then you can escape without dying. The next ability you have is called Struggle for Control. It costs 8 willpower, and it's a self-interrupt. It stops from casting an ability called Amber Explosion, which is raid-wide damage. It also increases damage taken by you as a construct by 100% for 5 seconds, which sounds bad, but sometimes you need to help the rest of the raid kill you quicker, and that's what that's useful for. Your main ability, though, while a construct, is called Amber Strike, which is a 6-second cooldown single target attack. It applies a stacking destabilize debuff on the target and damages them. This debuff increases damage taken on the person you've debuffed by 10% per stack for 12 seconds. And it also interrupts the target as well. And finally, the ability Break Free will appear when you're sub 20% life, and that lets you leave the construct form. Back to the fight itself, the boss every 50 seconds will convert somebody into a construct. In Phase 1, this can only be done to tanks. This requires you to have multiple tanks because when one tank has been constructed, the other tank has to tank the boss. So unless we have some sort of mechanical or strategic reason for keeping a person as a construct, which we'll get into later, Our goal as a raid is when someone becomes a construct, we need to damage them to sub 20% as quickly as possible so that if and when that constructed person needs to escape, they can do so. Now, the constructed person will, of course, be attacking the boss and doing various mechanics to debuff the boss or interrupt abilities while they are a construct. It's also important to know that as a construct, you will occasionally start casting a long cast of explosion, and that's when you do your self-interrupt with struggle to stop you from nuking the raid. So, once the boss itself hits 70% life remaining, Phase 2 begins. Anyone who's still a construct remains a construct. Switching between phases does not remove someone's construct ability. In Phase 2, the boss becomes non-attackable, but still continues to cast all the abilities we've discussed that he does. However, in Phase 2, a large monstrosity big ad spawns. This ad is tanked and does various abilities that we have to interact with. The first is called Amber Explosion, which is every 50 seconds, and this must be interrupted by a current construct's strike ability, which should be being cast often, so this kind of solves itself because they'll be applying the debuff as much as possible. It does a massive Stomp ability every 20 seconds, which is a large damage and knockback within 15 yards. Melee and constructs have to run out. And he does a Fling ability every 40 seconds, which picks up the current tanking tank and throws them away, stuns them for a few seconds, so the other tank has to take over. It's important to note, starting Phase 2, anybody can be a construct target now. And so this is what I meant in the start of this video, where everybody has to learn this. We can't just control who becomes a construct like the old times. When the Amber Monstrosity is dead, Phase 3 begins, and this reactivates the boss. Phase 3 is somewhat of a Zerg phase. He continues to cast everything that he was already casting, except for he stops doing the Amber Scalpel, which is the line that you have to kite away and generates more ads, which then are killed. That makes the pools. This means there's a limited number of resources to stay alive as a construct. You can't eat any more pools. The boss also self-buffs himself so that he gets 50% more damage and attack speed. So it truly is a Zerg before he kills us all situation. In Phase 3, any remaining Amber pools on the ground will have the potential to start shooting crystals out of them, and they'll target specific raiders, and it's the job of the rest of the raid to intercept one or two of these crystals before all of them hit the same raider, because that will kill them. In our strategy, it's good for the constructs that exist at the moment to intercept crystals as they come, because their health doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, whereas we want to make sure our existing remaining non-constructed raiders stay alive. Finally, in Heroic only, there's a special new thing that happens in Phase 3, which is every so often, 2 Amber globules will spawn on the sides of the map and fixate on one unique raider. So 2 raiders in total, 1 for each globule. And if they touch their target, they will explode and kill everyone within 30 yards. However, if the 2 fixated raiders kite their mobs to touch each other, they will despawn and the mechanic is resolved. So just to summarize the fight in general from a damage perspective, we're attacking the boss. When living Amber starts spawning, we swap to them to kill them before they touch their fixated target. When someone becomes a construct in Phase 1, unless we have a strategy reason, we nuke them down to 20% as quickly as possible, and then you get back on the boss. When 70% hits, Phase 2 start. We continue maintaining our control over existing living Ambers that spawn from the old pools, and we nuke that boss down as quickly as possible. Phase 3 starts, and it becomes the Zerg, where everyone slowly becomes constructs. We kill the boss as quickly as possible. We still do its mechanics. We deal with the Heroic only globs, kiting little mechanic, and we kill the boss. On top of all this, there are some wacky strategies that we're continuing to investigate, and we'll see what it's like on the PTR. But very simply, there's ways to abuse constructs and pools by purposely delaying how long Phase 1 is to build up more and more and more pools. Keep one of the tanks as a construct for a really long time by giving him those pools, allows him to build up an incredible number of debuffs on the boss, where we then hold damage on the boss at 72% and then wait for him to start casting an Amber Scalpel, which is a very long cast timer. And then because he has all these debuffs and then we pop hero and Zerg the boss, there's a scenario where we can nuke the boss's health down to almost dead before phase 2 starts. We then transition into phase 2 after the Amber Scalpel cast is done. We do phase 2 like normal with the large monstrosity, but then the second that large monstrosity is dead, the boss is down to like sub 10% life, and we just kind of instantly kill him in phase 3. But this is something we'll have to investigate with more research.